Hello everyone and welcome to our live on gut health, and delighted to have Dimple, our head of pharmacy, here with us.
Hi everyone, nice to see you again.
So obviously we're talking all things about gut health, and we've had a few questions from you, which are great. I think we'll walk through those throughout the live, but if you have any other questions, we've got our iPad here, so we can answer them as we go along. Just to put... Yeah, I'll see you all joining now, so maybe I'll just wait a little bit until you...
To get everyone on.
Hello everyone, we have Paula. Hello Nikki. Hello Carly. Yeah, so gut health is really interesting because it's such an expanding area of healthcare, and I think for years, for decades even, it's been dismissed really in terms of its importance, but now we realise that that gut health is really the centre of our health universe, and it's really where we should be looking first if you've got any sort of problem or imbalance in terms of health. So I think we at the pharmacy look at things in terms of science. So we always based our formulations and our advice on current up-to-date science. So that's really important to us to have clinical trials with human beings. That's really important. We don't believe in animal studies. We don't think it's relevant really for this area. It has to be in humans. And I think this area of science is expanding and developing so rapidly that we're having to update our knowledge continuously in terms of research that's being published. But also I think as consumers, as customers, I think we try and encourage people to look at things holistically as well. And actually what is the gut, what is the digestive system, and what role does it play? And I think, yes, we look at the science, we look at the clinical trials, but actually the gut is part of the whole. So, and I always think that it's really useful to try and frame things in a very kind of simple but clear way. And different systems, if you go to the Ayurvedic system in India and Asia, if you go to the Chinese traditional system, or even some of the European traditional systems, they'll look at the gut and they'll describe it in certain ways. And I like the way that the Ayurvedic system actually looks at the gut, and they call it the digestive metabolic system, and they'll call it the fire system, so the pitta area of the body if you're looking at constitution. So that's it's watery, it's all about heat and generating heat. So it's the furnace of the body, it's the area of the body that is not just limited to the gut, the intestines, small and large intestine, that all these organs kind of feed into it. So you've got the liver, you've got the gallbladder and the pancreas. So it's really important to look at it beyond just the gut itself, but obviously the biome is really important. And so if you don't have enough warmth in there and you don't have enough water in there, then generally the gut doesn't tend to perform very well, and that has an impact in terms of your digestive system, how you digest and absorb nutrients, and how the quality of your stools, so how frequent your stools are and the consistency of them. And so you can always tell what's generally happening in the digestive system. If the quality of your stools, if you've got loose stools or if you've got constipation, then there's an issue there that needs to be addressed. And obviously we're going to be focusing in quite a lot on the probiotics and the prebiotics here. But I think that I want us to think of it in terms of an interconnected system, a digestive metabolic system. So really important for the heat, the drive of the body, the ability to absorb nutrients, and the connection between the gut and the brain. So in terms of your nervous system, if it's running high, if it's running out of control, then that's going to start to drive an overactivity within the digestive system, within the gut, and that's going to have an impact on the microbiome, which is this balance of good bacteria and enzymes and proteins and mucus. So this is the sort of layer that sits above the lining of the gut, and that really plays such a fundamental role in how healthy you are. So we call it a rainforest, as in the microbiome, and I think it's a great analogy. And if you go into a rainforest, you have a diversity of ecosystem, so lots of different species of trees, and you have all the kind of the grubs and the bacteria that are within the soil, and actually that the soil is really equally as important as the bacteria themselves. So this is where the prebiotics come in. So I think that's probably a really useful framework, and to say that actually we can't just kind of compartmentalize the gut. We have to think of it in terms of how healthy are our emotions, how healthy is our thought process, our mental health, because that will have an impact on the system. How healthy is our diet, and how regular, are we eating those nutrients, those prebiotics, so the fibres, the proteins, and all the elements that come within the skins of fruit and vegetables that are really important. So we forget the skins, and I was always brought up with peeling everything. And actually, when you look at a lot of fruit and vegetables, the most important elements of that fruit as a whole, or that vegetable as a whole, comes within the skin. So I know for a fact, for instance, with broccoli, there's an enzyme called myrosinase that if you overcook broccoli, that you're going to kill that enzyme that is responsible for breaking the broccoli nutrients down within the gut. And if the broccoli is broken down properly, if it's digested properly, the impact of those compounds, particularly the sulfurous compounds, on gut health and general health is just phenomenal, and skin health. So we know, and we've got a product here that's made from a broccoli substrate, that broccoli, a component of broccoli called DIM, is great for acne. So again, this connection between the gut and the skin, we think, well, hang on a minute, how can the gut and the skin be connected? So this just demonstrates how fundamental and how interconnected the gut is with every other system, including the skin health. So I thought that'd be quite useful just to kind of frame that.
I think it's a good way of putting it, because often, unless you've done the research or you've come across this information, you really don't realise actually that the gut essentially controls everything, and it's understanding that relationship not only with sort of the gut and the brain, but there's that big link between the gut and our immune system and the gut and our skin as well. And so much research now that shows essentially if you look after your gut, and especially the gut microbiome, it can have such a fundamental impact on your overall health. So most people maybe look at probiotics initially to help with digestive symptoms, gut health problems, but actually we are now getting a lot more and more customers inquiring about actually how can probiotics help my skin, how can probiotics help my mental health, because there's just so much evidence and research now that shows the links between all of these areas. And often there's so many things that can impact the health of our gut and the microbiome that exists. So it's made up of trillions of different organisms, including sort of healthy bacteria, as Kevin mentioned, enzymes and proteins as well. But things like stress, certain medications, certain medical conditions, so many things can unfortunately harm that really fine balance between the good and the bad bacteria. So often most of us know when we take antibiotics, they may be great at sort of clearing up a particular type of infection, but they do so much damage to our gut microbiome that often you can be left with something like diarrhoea afterwards, or often thrush, whether it's oral or vaginal. And so there's so many sort of after effects that can happen when there's some damage being done to that microbiome. So by sort of looking after it, sort of restoring it, if you feel that there's an imbalance there, will then have such a big impact, not only locally, but across sort of the whole body. And you can kind of see that sort of when you're taking probiotics and your gut is healthy, to versus when you've had a course of antibiotics, for example, or you've been particularly stressed, where your gut has been sort of undergone sort of that stress. And that just shows that link between our minds and our gut. So often if you're quite nervous, if you're going in for an interview or something like that, you normally feel the butterflies in your stomach, and that kind of just cements the fact that there is that link there, that what's going on in your mind will affect your gut and vice versa. So I think it's really important to understand the benefits and actually the things that can affect the health of our gut microbiome. And then it's looking at actually how can we help that area and how can we strengthen it and look after it to manage all of these different symptoms. So often it's more looking at the cause as opposed to masking the symptoms, which a lot of maybe prescribed medications can do. You kind of treat a symptom as opposed to the root cause, which I think is really important.
Yeah, so I think prescribing practice is changing a lot, and when I was growing up, you had a sneeze, a cough, then you immediately got an antibiotic. Whereas at least now, there are some controls coming into there, although there is still a lot of overuse of antibiotics. And equally important, if not more importantly, there's not a standard practice, a standard operating procedure for GPs and for pharmacists to recommend a probiotic, a good probiotic alongside antibiotics, because what antibiotics do in a very targeted way is they'll wipe out a certain range of bacteria, and they can obviously affect the enzymes and the fungus and the healthy fungus that we have in our gut. So I think that as a rule, if you're having anything like a major medication that's going to have an impact on your gut, like an antibiotic, but I also include what we call PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, so things like omeprazole. So if you've got too much acid in your stomach, then that is going to have an impact. You perhaps had gastric ulceration, or you've got problems with heartburn, then the impact that will have and the medication that you'll be given on your microbiome will be very significant. So it's really important to put that protection in place every day. And that's the other probably point. Dimple knows this better than I do, because she's on the phones and the email more than I am these days. And so you often have to peel back a few layers of the story. So we talk about the health story with individuals, and we want to get behind what the health story is. What were the events that led up to your suddenly having indigestion or heartburn? What were the things that caused? There might have been a major trauma or whatever it is that affected your digestive system and your mental health. So we often can try and get behind the symptoms themselves.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think that we thankfully, thanks to everybody for sending in all your questions. We've got a list here as if we were planning to go through, and I can see that a few are coming through.
I'll bring them up on here so we can see them a bit.
On the feed. Is it necessary to take probiotic with magnesium and turmeric as well? Well, from my perspective, I think they're very different. Is the probiotic, if it's a good one and a good broad spectrum probiotic, if it's taken alongside another supplement, it's going to help the absorption and the general distribution of the ingredients and the nutrients throughout the gut. So I think there are lots of advantages taking probiotics alongside your treatments, and that includes things like proton pump inhibitors, omeprazole, and antibiotics. So there's lots of benefits there. But if you took the magnesium and the turmeric on their own, then they would work just as effectively.
Yeah, and each essentially has its own benefits, and often actually taking different supplements that target different areas, you're kind of looking at it as a whole picture. So probiotics, yes, they work within the gut, but often you might find that you want to take something like the natural flex turmeric to really target pain and inflammation quite quickly. And then the magnesium obviously is something we spoke about on our previous live, and that has its own benefits, and it helps in a slightly different way with sort of supporting our different sort of physiological processes within the body as well. So it's looking really at maybe the health areas that are important to you. And then we as pharmacists, we're always here at the Naked Pharmacy to answer those questions and maybe put a plan together in terms of what supplements would work very well for you. But often you can take probiotics alongside all of our other range of the supplements, and it's definitely recommended. It's one of our most popular ones, and you can clearly see why, because it sort of ticks all the boxes. I think no matter what area you're looking for help in, it does tend to help, sort of whether it's gut or mental health and immune health. I think we kind of say this a lot, but 70% of our immune system is actually located in the gut. So it is a no-brainer that actually looking after your gut microbiome will have that positive knock-on effect onto your sort of gut health.
So just picking up the questions we've had emailed through. So Ma, I'm taking gut love. Will it help my skin outbreaks and sensitivity? So I'm presuming you get these quite a lot.
Yeah, this is a really popular one, and skin health is so important to all of us. And often we tend to sort of opt for topical treatments to apply things onto the surface of our skin. But what I tend to, based on all the research that is now available between that link between our skin and our guts, it's known as the gut-skin axis. It's almost looking at what works on the inside and working from the inside out. So if you look after your gut microbiome, that has a direct link on the health of our skin. So yes, you will see a benefit with your skin. The advice I would give with that is definitely persevere. So it's not going to be one that you notice within the first couple of weeks. It's something that you do need to take quite regularly to make sure you see those benefits to filter through to your skin. And actually we mentioned with antibiotics and probiotics as well, another question that we tend to get asked is I've started a course of antibiotics, should I wait to start my probiotics? And the answer is no. The sooner you can get sort of taking probiotics, the better. So definitely worthwhile. And it's also important to note that it takes about sort of 6 months regular use, actually following a course of antibiotics, to restore that balance. So you can see the difference like a course of antibiotics can make. So it's really important to get started really as soon as you can, and then continue with that ongoing to see the benefits there.
So just to pick up on that question as well, with outbreaks, skin outbreaks, so if they look like they're sort of red raised pimples, that like acne, it doesn't necessarily have to be acne, but then we have another product here. We have a range of products, so we can obviously kind of, if you call in or email in the pharmacy, the pharmacist team will recommend, go through your symptoms and talk it through. I talked about broccoli and the broccoli substrate called DIM. We have a product here called Skin Acumax, which is very good for skin breakout. So we might add that on to alongside the probiotic and the prebiotic mix, which is Gut Love. So we tend to look at individuals, so we'll often vary the prescription or the recommendation, if you like, based on what we're seeing, because there are always individual variations. So thank you for that question. We have one from GM Smith. What is the best diet for gout in foot and ankle problem? So gout's quite an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And often, it's difficult to know where it's come from, but ideally you're looking to sort of reduce foods or things that can increase your uric acid, because often it's an accumulation of that can cause that flare-up of gout. So often it's avoiding things like alcoholic beverages, so often beers and sort of spirits can cause that. And red meats are often things that are sort of recommended to be avoided. And gout is that inflammation within that specific area. So I think it's the toe and the ankle for this particular person. So something like a turmeric supplement would also be very beneficial. So we do our Natural Flex turmeric, which is a natural, powerful anti-inflammatory and pain reliever. And a lot of our customers do use it for helping to treat things like gout, but also very beneficial for arthritic pain. And again, it helps to target inflammation within the gut as well. So that would be something that would work very well to help sort of treat and actually keep any flare-ups of gout at bay.
Yeah, obviously it's the uric acid crystals forming within the joint. So obviously that's extremely painful. I know my father's had it and a few times. And I think that obviously hydration is really key. Is to try and reduce the acidity of your diet. So obviously this is where green leafy vegetables are great, and try to kind of avoid kind of things that will increase acidity. So some fruits, for instance, have got high acid content, so it might be useful to kind of avoid the citrus fruits for a while, and lots of water. So hydration is really important, and regular water and diuretics. So things like coffee and tea, unfortunately, are diuretics. They make you pee, and so that's obviously going to contribute to a sort of dehydration, which is not what you want. And it's foot and ankle problems tend to be quite difficult to get to. So, I've seen cases of plantar fasciitis which are really difficult and stubborn to treat because of where it is. So it's really the consistency of what you're doing is really important to get on top of it to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Absolutely. Just had someone sort of comment on taking magnesium and turmeric, really noticed the difference. So it's always great to hear sort of positive feedback, and actually the recommendations that we've made have made a difference. So thank you.
Julie is asking about good diet exercise, but she has diverticular disease. Could your products help? Now, diverticular disease is one that I know very well because my father's suffered from it in the past, and has to be very careful about what he eats and what he doesn't eat. So I think your diet, obviously you'll have a list of do's and don'ts with your diet sheet. That's really important. I think the gut love is really, really useful because it's helping to break down with the broad range. It's just useful to mention that many probiotics have a narrow range of probiotics, and actually the range of probiotics within a probiotic supplement is more important than the actual quantity, whether it's 19 billion that we have here. It's really important the diversity that you've got, because you're trying to replace that diversity. You've got a rainforest down there, so you want to put as diverse a range of good bacteria back into the gut. So yes, definitely to probiotics. The prebiotic fibres are really important, and also the slippery elm in there provides a really nice natural protective lining to the gut, as well as protecting the probiotics. So definitely the gut love. I think anything that reduces inflammation within the gut, I think it's going to help with any type of bowel condition like diverticular disease. So the Nasflex turmeric, all I would say is that if you have gut sensitivity, sometimes it's useful just to open the turmeric capsules, because they're very, very strong. You mix it with a yogurt and take it like that and stir it around, and make a fantastic coloured yogurt. And that way you reduce that sensitivity, because when the gut gets hypersensitive, then it tends to react to lots of things it shouldn't do, and you've got to try and dampen that down. So that includes some supplements. So with the turmeric and the pepper in there, then mix it with a natural full fat yogurt. We're not into these diet yogurts, because of actually good fats are good for you, and actually sometimes the things that they put in there to replace the good fats in a diet yogurt are not particularly very healthy either. So that's definitely a way to go. So we had the question here, what makes a good probiotic?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I think Kevin sort of touched on that just now. So ideally you're looking for one that has a varied number of strains, and Gut Love contains 19 strains of probiotics, and this is one of the really key defining factors of why sort of you might find Gut Love works a bit more successfully than other probiotics you've tried. And I've spoken to a number of customers that have sort of said, I've tried a probiotic before, but it's not really worked for me. But often they've sort of tried one that has a much fewer number of strains, so maybe 3 or 4. But what's sort of drawn them in is that CFU count, so the colony forming units, is very high. So you think actually you're getting a very good probiotic. But it's almost you're just taking a couple of strains at a high dose, whereas something with something like Gut Love has got 19 different strains, and each strain essentially has its own health benefit. Yeah. So that sort of clarifies actually like the diversity of a probiotic is really the key defining factor. And the other thing with Gut Love is we've also included the 2 prebiotics. The one that Kevin mentioned was the slippery elm, and the other one is organic baobab. And what prebiotics help to do is they are essentially food for the probiotics to thrive in the gut and sort of help successfully. And a combination of a pre and probiotic is known as a symbiotic. And that is sort of the optimal formulation that you're going to be having to really help your microbiome thrive. And it's the slippery elm that helps making sure that actually these probiotics are reaching your gut where you know they're going to be effective, because that's normally another common question we get is actually, how do you know they're getting down into the gut? And it's the slippery elm that creates that emulsion around the probiotics, protecting it against that stomach acid, so that's getting delivered down into the gut where we know it's going to be beneficial. So it's kind of a 2-in-1, the slippery elm. It's a prebiotic and then it's also there helping sort of with the probiotics. And stability, I think, is another good one. So a lot of probiotics do need to be stored in the fridge to make sure that they stay stable and the sort of bacteria are still stay alive. With Gut Love, again, no need to store it in the fridge. It's stable at room temperature. So as long as it's stored in a cool, dry place, that is one of the good. Then other things that sort of benefits, and actually you can travel with it. So again, most of us sort of suffer with as maybe a dodgy tummy when you're traveling for holidays and things like that. So taking a probiotic sort of prior to travel, during your trip, can help protect your stomach and stop any sort of that dreaded diarrhoea that we can often get when we travel abroad and try new cuisine. So it makes it quite easy to travel with as well. So there's lots of things to look for. And I think something like Gut Love really ticks all the boxes. But for me, is actually the number of strains and the fact that there's nothing else in there other than the sort of the 21 pre and probiotics inside a tapioca capsule shell. There's nothing artificial, synthetic, no bulking agents, which you often find added into a lot of other probiotics and supplements. So you get what it says on the tin and that's it. So it's not going to sort of irritate the stomach, especially if you're quite sensitive with gut issues, that sort of thing. So a good one.
Just to say, I can see other questions scrolling up. Sometimes you're not quite fast enough to catch them. If we don't answer any of your questions during this half an hour live, obviously we will probably schedule another one. These will be regular anyway on different topics, and please do, if there are any specific topics you want to cover. I saw a question earlier on which went off screen before I could properly read it. It was treatments for osteoarthritis, and that's a whole subject. Arthritis and osteoarthritis arthritis is a whole subject in itself. So we will kind of schedule kind of lives on subjects that you want to hear about. If we don't cover questions that we've missed the scroll, we will just email them in or call us, and we'll cover them after the live. So one way or another, we will get round to answering all your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, and the email, just to pop out there, it's pharmacist@thenakedpharmacy.com. So we'll be on hand to answer any other questions, or if you want to give us a call, I'm happy to speak to you this afternoon as well.
Just to say that we have been kind of working our pharmacist advice service from 9 till 2. But as of the middle of this month, we've got a new pharmacist starting full time, and as a result of that, we'll be extending our pharmacist advice service from 9 till 5. So we're really pleased about that. I think there's certainly been a massive upturn in demand. So, and Charlotte's a very experienced pharmacist, and I'm sure Dimple is quite happy that we've got
some extra help. Absolutely, and that will just allow us to come back to you a lot quicker and answer any questions that you have. And many of you might have already spoken to Charlotte before, so absolutely excited for her to join us, and hopefully we can answer any queries that you guys have.
So another question came on the list, is what makes gut health worse? Well, I'll chip in initially. I'm sure Dimple's got a whole list, but for me, the one no for gut health, particularly on a sensitive gut, because it's a sort of spiral snowballing effect when the gut starts to be oversensitive and starts to get inflamed. Remember that cell wall of the gut is only one cell thick, so if you had the equivalent on your skin, it'd be kind of a very raw red skin, hypersensitive. So you've got to think of it in a much more sensitive way, so in terms of what you're putting in the gut. So sugar, particularly hidden sugars and artificial sweeteners are the big no-nos from my perspective. And it's not that you can't have sugar, but the combination of and the balance between sugar and protein and carbohydrates eventually get converted to sugar. So it's thinking about, okay, what am I having here? It might be that biscuit, but it might have 10, 15 grams of sugar in. And the impact that sugar has is it's pro-inflammatory, so it immediately causes inflammation along the gut lining. There's all sorts of impacts of that inflammation if it gets prolonged. So if you're having regular sugar intakes, and that also might be through drinks, that the long-term inflammation of the gut lining means that you get this kind of, the wall starts to break, so toxins from the gut can move across that membrane, that barrier, that protective barrier, into the other side of the gut wall, and that then starts to work into more systemic, so whole body type conditions. So don't underestimate the power of food to cause disease, but also don't underestimate the power of food to basically resolve conditions. So it is fixable, but you've just really got to look at what your daily routines are and what your habits are, and try and find a way to change that. So I was reading a little comment on there. I would really like more information on osteoarthritis, so we will log that in for future reference. Maybe we'll do a separate session on
I think that may be
inflammation.
Any feedback that you guys want for the next one. It looks like osteoarthritis is definitely one of the winners, so we'll plan that into sort of our workload and and maybe focus on that. But yeah, give us a call and I'll be happy to speak to you about that in particular if you wanted some more advice.
Just the last one on the list is, can I take gut love alongside metabolic gold?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So another popular question is, can I take gut love alongside any other supplements? And generally the answer is yes, that's fine. And with metabolic gold, that's no problem at all. But if you do want to check it against any other medication in particular that you might be taking, just give us a call or drop us an email and we'll be able to answer that on a more of a personal level.
And there's no interactions with gut love. That's the great thing about probiotics. Prebiotics, they don't interact with conventional medications, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you do have a concern, then you can always email the Pharmacists at negativepharmacy.com or call us on the telephone line.
Yeah, and lots of people wanting osteoarthritis one, so yeah, we'll get that booked in.
That's noted, yeah. Thank you so much. Sorry we don't have any more time today. We have to keep these lives to 30 minutes now because of the new rules. But we will pick your subjects up. Just if there's any questions we've missed, then do email the Pharmacist at email address or call us, and we will pick those up. And equally, if you've got subjects like the osteoarthritis that you want us to pick up on our next live, then we'll build that into the plan.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much
for joining.
Thank you so much for joining us, and see you next time.